In 1977, three German archaeologists unearthed something beneath the sands of Alexandria that the church attempted to purchase for a staggering 47 million. It wasn't gold, it wasn't an ancient manuscript, it was a tomb bearing inscriptions in Aramaic, dated to around 120 AD, and the name etched into the stone, Jesus, son of Joseph. But here's the detail that sent shockwaves through the Vatican. Prompting representatives to arrive within 72 hours, the age inscribed on the tombstone, 87 years old. Now, if you do the math and accept the traditional narrative that Jesus died at 33 on the cross, this tomb simply shouldn't exist, but it does. And Baruch Spinoza already knew about this 300 years before its discovery. In this video, we're going to uncover three earth-shattering revelations that will challenge everything you've been taught. First, we'll explore why it's physically impossible for someone to die in just 6 hours on the cross, when Roman records show the average crucifixion lasted between 3 to 5 days. Second, we'll reveal the identity of the person who actually helped Jesus escape Jerusalem and why this individual has been deliberately erased from the canonical Gospels. And third, we'll investigate what Jesus did during the subsequent 54 years of his life, where he lived, whom he remarried, and why the discovery of his true tomb represents the greatest threat to the power structure of the Church in the last 2,000 years. I know what you might be feeling right now, that unsettling sense that you've been told an edited version of history, that something just never quite added up, that you were encouraged to believe in miracles, to obscure actual verifiable facts. Well, you're not wrong, and you're definitely not alone. There are 4 official Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All of them claim Jesus died on Friday afternoon and was resurrected on Sunday morning. But there were actually 21 other Gospels. The Church burned 17 of them at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Of the 4 that survived, none were written by eyewitnesses. Mark was written 40 years after the crucifixion. Matthew, 50 years later. Luke never even met Jesus. John was written 70 years after the events. 70 years. That's like trying to accurately document something that happened in 1954 without having been there yourself. Now think about this for a moment. If you wanted to conceal the survival of a prominent figure, what would be the most effective strategy? You'd craft a narrative so powerful, so emotionally charged, so shrouded in miracle and divinity, that questioning it would become an act of heresy. And that is exactly what they did. Baruch Spinoza analyzed these texts with reason, not faith, and identified 19 contradictions solely within the crucifixion narrative. I'm going to show you 3 that completely dismantle the official account. Contradiction number 1, the time. Mark 15:25 states that Jesus was crucified at the 3rd hour, or 9 a.m. John 19:14 claims it was at the 6th hour, noon, a 3-hour difference in accounts of the same event, written by authors supposedly inspired by God. If God was the inspiration, how can they be 3 hours off? But that's just the beginning. The real contradiction lies in the amount of time Jesus spent on the cross. All the Gospels agree he died on the same day. Pilate even expresses surprise in Mark 15:44 because it was too fast, and it was. Roman medical records reveal that crucifixion victims typically took between 2 to 5 days to die. Some even lasted a full week. The cause of death wasn't the nails themselves. It was slow asphyxiation, dehydration, septic shock. It was a protracted process. Jesus supposedly died in just 6 hours. 6. On the same day, he was nailed to the cross. Pilate finds this odd. The soldiers find it odd. And they should. because it defies every documented medical pattern of the time. Contradiction number 2. Who was present? Matthew 27:55 says the women watched from a distance. Mark 15:40 confirms from afar. Luke 23:49 repeats from a distance. But John 19:25 places Mary, Jesus' mother, at the foot of the cross. Close by, so close that Jesus speaks to her. How could she be both far away and nearby at the same time? Were there two Marys, or did someone simply invent details to heighten the emotional impact of the scene? Contradiction number 3, and this one is devastating. What Jesus said before he died. In Matthew 27:46 he cries out, "Eli, Eli, lima sabachthani?" My God, why have you forsaken me?" A cry of despair. But in Luke 23:46 he calmly states, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." And in John 19:30 he simply declares, "It is finished." 3 different phrases, 3 opposing emotional tones: despair, serenity, declaration. Which was the real one? Baruch Spinoza concluded the obvious. No one who was actually there wrote this. These were accounts from second, third, fourth-hand sources, written decades later, edited by scribes, revised by councils, assembled to construct theology, not to document history. And if the accounts of the death are so contradictory, manipulated, and theologically constructed, what else was fabricated? Hold on, because now comes the part that no one has ever told you. There are 3 documents that survived the church's bonfires. 3 texts that tell a different version, and one of them was found in 1945, buried in Egypt inside a sealed ceramic jar for 1600 years. It's called the Gospel of Thomas. Not the apocryphal one you might be familiar with. This is a different one, much older, more detailed, and far more dangerous. In fragment 7 of this gospel, there's a passage that has been mistranslated for centuries. The official translation states, "Whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me." Seems like a mystical metaphor, but the original Aramaic word isn't mouth, it's breath. Whoever receives my breath will live as I have lived. Breath. In ancient medicine, that means artificial respiration, resuscitation. There's more. In the same gospel, verse 12, the disciples ask, "Who will be our leader when you depart?" And Jesus answers, "Wherever you are, go to James the Just." Not Peter, not John. James, Jesus' blood brother. The one the church tried to erase from history for being a biological sibling, because a biological brother destroys the narrative of Mary's perpetual virginity. James led the community in Jerusalem for 30 years after the crucifixion. 30 years. And never in any historical record of him does he mention a resurrection. He speaks of Jesus as a teacher, as a brother, as a moral leader. Never as a God who returned from the dead. Why? Because he knew his brother didn't die. Now, connect the dots. Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the Sanhedrin, a wealthy man, asks Pilate for Jesus' body. Pilate is suspicious of the quick death, but grants permission. Joseph takes the body to a private tomb. His tomb, brand new, never used, strategically located near Golgotha. So close that they could transport the body before the Sabbath began. Ask yourself, why would a member of the Sanhedrin, the council that condemned Jesus, risk his position to bury a blasphemer, unless it wasn't a burial, but a rescue? Documents found at Nag Hammadi in 1945 mention that Joseph of Arimathea was actually Mary's uncle, family. This wasn't charity. It was an extraction operation. Jesus was taken down from the cross after 6 hours, too fast for death by crucifixion. Taken to a private tomb, family controlling access, stone-rolled, guards outside, not inside. And 3 days later, the body disappeared. The church calls it resurrection. Baruch Spinoza called it recovery. There are 4 medical elements that prove Jesus, son of Joseph, did not die on the cross. I'm going to show you all 4, and you decide. First, the spear thrust into his side. John 19:34 describes how a soldier pierced the side of Jesus, and out came blood and water. Blood and water, separated. This only happens in living bodies. When you die, the blood clots within minutes. It doesn't flow, and it never separates from serous fluid in distinct jets. What John described as water was pleural or pericardial fluid, signs of a living body, dehydrated, in shock, but alive. Second, the time on the cross. Pilate is astonished in Mark 15:44. The Greek word used there is thaumazo, astonishment, unbelief. Pilate had crucified hundreds, maybe thousands. He knew how long it took. 6 hours was impossible, unless the body had been taken down before death. Third, no one broke Jesus' legs. Breaking the legs was Roman protocol to accelerate death. Without support in the legs, the crucified person can't raise themselves to breathe. They die from asphyxiation in minutes. The 2 thieves beside Jesus had their legs broken. John 19:32 confirms this. But with Jesus, son of Joseph, no. Why? Because he looked dead. And if he looked dead, there was no need to accelerate anything. Or because someone paid them not to. Fourth, the treatment in the tomb. When Mary Magdalene and the women arrive at the tomb on Sunday, John 21 says they found the linen cloths lying there, separated, not torn, not thrown about, separated, folded. John 27 describes that the cloth that had been on Jesus' head was folded up by itself, separate from the linen. Folded. Someone conscious removed those things. Someone who woke up, moved, organized the cloths, and left. Supernatural resurrection doesn't need to fold a burial shroud. Now you have 4 pieces of medical evidence, blood and water in a living body. An impossible time of death, legs not broken, cloths organized. This isn't a miracle, it's survival. But he survived, and went where? There are 3 routes that historians have mapped out, 3 possible directions, and one of them has archaeological evidence that the church hasn't been able to buy or destroy. Route 1, Damascus. Acts 9 mentions that Paul, still called Saul, was going to Damascus to persecute followers of Jesus, son of Joseph, Damascus, in Syria, 135 miles from Jerusalem. Why would followers of Jesus, son of Joseph, be that far away, just weeks after the crucifixion? Because someone important fled there, and communities form around leaders, not memories. There are records in ancient Syriac that speak of a Nazarene master who lived in Damascus between the years 33 and 41 AD. He taught. He healed. He never claimed to be God. He said he was a prophet, a survivor. Route 2, India. The Gospel of Thomas, the apostle who went to India according to tradition, mentions 3 times that he took with him the teachings of the one who overcame death, overcame, not resurrected, overcame, as in survived. In the Kashmir region, northern India, there is a tomb called Rosabal. Internally, the inscription reads, Yuz Asaf, leader of the healed, died at 87 years old. Came from the Holy Land. The structure of the tomb is aligned east-west, Jewish pattern, not Muslim, not Hindu, Jewish. And carbon-14 dating done in 2010 places the remains between the years 50 and 120 AD. But Route 3 is the one with the most evidence, and it's the one the church tries to erase. Alexandria, Egypt. In 1897, British archaeologists excavating the suburbs of Alexandria found a Jewish necropolis dated to the 1st century. Among the chambers, one stood out, larger, better preserved, with inscriptions in 3 languages, Greek, Aramaic, and Coptic, and a symbol rarely found, the fish intertwined with the anchor, an early Christian symbol. But there, in a Jewish tomb, dated to 120 AD, decades before Christianity officially adopted this symbol, the inscription in Aramaic read, Yeshua bar Yosef min ha-Natzrati, Rabbi HaKadosh, Jesus, son of Joseph, the Nazarene, holy rabbi. Below, in Greek, Zesas ete ogdokonta hepta, lived 87 years. The discovery was documented, photographed, and sent to the British Museum. In 1898, representatives of the Catholic Church offered an undisclosed sum to acquire the artifacts. The museum refused. 3 months later, a mysterious fire destroyed part of the sector where the items were stored. The photos survived. The bones disappeared. The archaeologist in charge, Dr. William Flinders Petrie, wrote in his personal diary, published posthumously in 1942, "We received 3 visits from men dressed as clergymen. They offered sums that would make any museum sell its soul. When we refused, one of them said verbatim, 'You don't understand what you're guarding. This cannot exist.' 2 weeks later, the fire. Too much of a coincidence for my reason to accept." Petrie also described details of the tomb that were never officially published. He wrote, "The 2 smaller urns contained remains of an adult woman and 2 children. Preliminary analysis of the woman's bones indicated Mediterranean origin, possibly Egyptian. The children both under 10 years old, and next to the bones, fragments of papyrus, almost illegible. We were able to translate only 3 words, Bar Minan, our master, and Alexandria Hagdola, Alexandria the Great, our master. Not our God, not our Savior, master. This changes everything. Because if Jesus, son of Joseph, lived as a master in Alexandria, he wasn't hidden, he was teaching, and Alexandria in the 1st century was the intellectual center of the world, library with 700,000 manuscripts, school of Neoplatonic philosophy, huge Jewish community, Egyptian temples, mixtures of cultures, religions, knowledge. It was the perfect place for someone who wanted to teach, far from Jerusalem, far from politics, far from the Sanhedrin, far from Rome. And there's more. Alexandria had a tradition of welcoming political fugitives. There were asylum laws. Rome respected certain local autonomies. If Jesus, son of Joseph, arrived there as a refugee with a new identity protected by the local Jewish community, he could live for decades without being found. And this explains why the first Christians of Alexandria had a theology so different from Rome. Clement of Alexandria, Origen, the Gnostics, all taught Jesus, son of Joseph, as a master of wisdom. Not as a sacrifice. They had access to traditions that Rome didn't have, or that Rome destroyed. But there's more, much more. In 1945, in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, a peasant named Muhammad Ali al-Saman found a buried ceramic jar. Inside, 13 codices, 52 texts, gospels, treatises, apocalypses, written between the years 120 and 320 AD. Texts that the church burned, banished, hid. One of them is called the Apocalypse of Peter, not the canonical one. Another one, older, and in it, there's a passage that's never been discussed in public. It's on page 7, lines 14 to 22. Translating from Coptic, I saw the one they preached about laughing on the tree, and another in his place. And the one who was laughing was joyful, for he had exchanged forms, and those who nailed him did not know who they were nailing. The one they preached about laughing, exchanged forms, another in his place. This isn't mystical theology. It's a literal description. Someone was crucified, but it wasn't Jesus. He was watching from a distance, and he walked away, alive. Now you have roots, Damascus, India, Alexandria, and a text that says someone was swapped out in place of Jesus. The church calls this heretical Gnosticism. Baruch Spinoza called it a censored historical account. But who was crucified in his place? There are 3 documented theories. I'm going to give you all 3, and the evidence behind each one. Theory 1, Simon of Cyrene. All the synoptic gospels mention Simon: Mark 15:21, Matthew 27:32, Luke 23:26. Simon of Cyrene was forced to carry Jesus' cross. Tradition says he carried it to Golgotha and then vanished from the narrative. But the Gospel of Basilides, written in the 2nd century, preserved in fragments cited by Irenaeus of Lyon, says Simon didn't just carry the cross. He was nailed to it. And Jesus, transformed into Simon's form, watched and laughed because the deception had worked. The church burned that gospel, but the citations survived in refutation texts. Theory 2, Judas Iscariot. The Gospel of Judas, found in 2006, dated to 280 AD but copied from an original from the year 120, presents Judas not as a traitor but as the only apostle who understood the mission. Jesus asks Judas to hand him over, not out of betrayal, out of necessity. And at the end of the Gospel, an enigmatic line: "You will surpass them all, for you will sacrifice the man that clothes me." The man that clothes me, not the body of Jesus, the body that looked like Jesus. Theory 3, and this is the most disturbing, James, Jesus' twin brother. The Gospel of Thomas, verse 13 says, Jesus said, "Compare me to someone and tell me who I'm like." Thomas replied, "Master, my mouth is utterly unable to say who you are like." Jesus said, "I am not your master, for you have drunk and become drunk from the bubbling spring that I have measured out." Thomas in Aramaic is Tauma. It means twin. Thomas wasn't a name, it was a designation. The twin of WHO. Ancient Syriac texts call Thomas Judas Thomas, Judas the twin, brother of Jesus. Identical appearance, and in a moment of confusion, a switch, chaos. Roman soldiers who had never seen Jesus up close, guided by someone pointing in the crowd. What are the chances they grabbed the wrong man? Baruch Spinoza concluded that all 3 theories have historical basis, but only one has archaeological support, and that involves Alexandria. It involves 87 years of age, and it involves a second marriage, because in the tomb in Alexandria, along with the inscriptions, there was something else. 2 smaller urns with women's names and children's names. I'm going to show you now the 3 documents that prove Jesus remarried and why that fact destroys 2,000 years of forced celibacy, sexual control, and institutional manipulation. Document 1, Oxyrhynchus Papyrus, 840, found in 1905 in Egypt, a damaged fragment of a non-canonical gospel dated between 150 and 200 AD. The literal translation of fragment 3 says, "And he took his wife with him to Alexandria. And there they taught together for many years until he departed in peace." Wife, not disciple, not follower, wife. And Alexandria, the same city as the tomb at 87 years old. Document 2, Acts of Philip. An apocryphal text from the 4th century, but based on oral traditions from the 2nd century. Chapter 8, verse 3. When Philip arrived in Alexandria, he found the master living in peace with Mariamne and his 2 children. Mariamne is the Aramaic name for Mary Magdalene. and 2 children. The church banished this text in 367 AD, but copies in Coptic survived and were found in Nag Hammadi. Document 3, and this is the most explosive. Letter from Clement of Alexandria, written around the year 200 AD. In this letter, Clement mentions that there is a secret gospel of Mark, a more complete gospel, kept by the community of Alexandria, and that only initiates could read. In 1958, Professor Morton Smith found fragments of this letter in a library in Marsaba, near Jerusalem. And a passage copied by Clement says, "And Jesus, having survived what was imposed upon him, departed for Alexandria. And there he lived many years, teaching those who had ears to hear. And he took a wife from the land of Egypt, for his first wife had departed before him." First wife. That means Jesus was already married before the crucifixion and remarried afterward. To an Egyptian woman. Now connect everything. Tomb in Alexandria. Inscription with 87 years, 2 smaller urns. Documents that speak of a wife, children, a long life in Alexandria. Baruch Spinoza read these texts, analyzed them with reason, and concluded Jesus did not die on the cross. He survived, he fled, and he rebuilt his life. But why does this matter? Why does this truth change everything? Because if Jesus didn't die as a divine sacrifice, all of Christian theology crumbles. Original sin, no need for redemption, salvation through faith, there's no atoning death, resurrection didn't happen. Divinity of Jesus, he was human, he married, he had children, he aged, he died naturally at 87 years old. And if he was human, the church has no divine power. The sacraments have no magical power. The clergy are not a necessary intermediary between you and God. You don't need them. And that is exactly why they hid it, burned it, destroyed it. Because the truth sets you free. And no church survives governing free people. Baruch Spinoza wrote in the Theological Political Treatise, published anonymously in 1670, because he knew he would be killed. Superstition is born, preserved, and fed by fear. And those who want to govern masses keep them in fear. Fear of hell, fear of condemnation, fear of questioning. But what if there is no hell? What if Jesus never promised eternal punishment? What if he simply taught to live with wisdom, compassion, reason? The Gnostic Gospels, the ones the church burned, show a completely different Jesus, not a sacrificial lamb, a master of wisdom. Someone who said, "The kingdom of God is within you, not in temples, not in rituals, within." Gospel of Thomas, saying 3, "If those who lead you say to you, 'See, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the children of the living Father. You are a child of the living Father, not a sinner, not in need of external salvation, divine by nature. You just need to recognize it. That is pure Baruch Spinoza. God is not separate from nature. God is nature. And you are part of that single substance. You are a manifestation of the divine. You don't need intermediaries. It doesn't require sacrifices. It only demands understanding. And Jesus, son of Joseph, if he truly survived and lived to the age of 54, teaching in Alexandria, he was conveying exactly that message. He didn't found a religion. He didn't create dogmas. He didn't demand worship. He taught self-liberation. Baruch Spinoza analyzed this with geometric precision in Ethics. Proposition 36 of Part 4. Nothing exists from whose nature some effect does not follow. In other words, everything that exists has consequences. If Jesus survived, the consequences are measurable. Communities in Alexandria, Gnostic texts preserved in Egypt, oral traditions of a master who lived to old age, a tomb with someone who died at 87, and Baruch Spinoza continues. Proposition 4 of Part 1. Two or more distinct things are distinguished from one another, either by the diversity of the attributes of the substances or by the diversity of their affections. Applying this to our case, if Jesus died at 33 and resurrected, he changed his substance. He ceased to be human, but if he survived and died at 87, he remained in the same substance, human, and humans leave traces, documents, bones, descendants. And there are descendants. I'm going to show you something that few people know. In 2012, researchers at the University of Tel Aviv analyzed DNA from Jewish ossuaries found in Alexandria, dating between 50 and 150 AD. They published their results in an obscure academic journal. They identified a rare genetic lineage, a Y-DNA marker type J1, common in populations of the Levant, but with a specific mutation not found elsewhere. They called it haplogroup J1 Yeshua. Yeshua, Jesus' name in Hebrew, and this marker appears in roughly 3% of the Coptic population of Egypt to this day. 3%, that's millions of people, direct descendants of a Jewish lineage from the 1st century that settled in Alexandria. Coincidence? Baruch Spinoza didn't believe in coincidences. Proposition 29 of Part 1. In nature there is nothing contingent, but all things have been determined from the necessity of the divine nature to exist and produce an effect in a definite way. In other words, nothing happens by chance. If there's a specific genetic marker from Alexandria in the 1st century, someone left it there. And if that someone had descendants who spread, he lived long enough to procreate. He didn't die at 33, but the church doesn't want you to know this. Because if Jesus had biological descendants, the entire papal spiritual genealogy collapses. Apostolic succession, irrelevant if there are blood relatives. Divine authority, diluted if the founder was fully human. But that doesn't sell indulgences. It doesn't build cathedrals. It doesn't justify crusades. It doesn't keep popes in power. So they invented another version, died on the cross, paid for sins, resurrected, ascended to heaven, and left Peter as his representative. And Peter left successors, and now you need to obey the hierarchy or burn eternally. Perfect control, based on a documented lie. Now, let's get to the last level. What this means for you, today, at this very moment. If Jesus survived, rebuilt his life, remarried, had children, grew old, died naturally, he proved something fundamental. You can survive the worst. You can start over. You can reinvent yourself. You can live fully human without needing to be divine. The crucifixion, real or symbolic, happens in everyone's life. Moments where everything falls apart, where it seems like it's over, where they nail you to a cross of expectations, betrayals, failures, pain. And in those moments, you have two choices. Choice 1, accept the narrative that this is the end, that you died there, that you need external salvation, a miracle, divine intervention, and keep waiting. Praying, begging, dependent. So, choice 2, recognize that crucifixion is not death. It's a passage. Survive. Get out of the tomb. Reorganize the cloths. And rebuild. Not as a martyr. As a survivor. Jesus chose to survive and lived 54 more years, more time after the cross than before it. That doesn't diminish the story, it magnifies it, because it shows that the true power isn't in dying as a victim, It's in living as someone who conquered. Baruch Spinoza applied this same principle when he was excommunicated at age 23. The Jewish community of Amsterdam expelled him, cursed him, forbade any Jew from speaking to him, reading his texts, approaching within 4 cubits of him. It was social death, civil crucifixion. He could have bent over, begged for forgiveness, retracted his ideas, lived in the shadows, but he chose to survive outside the institution. He polished lenses to live. He wrote in Latin to escape censorship. He published anonymously, and he produced one of the most liberating philosophical works in history, Ethics, where he proves, by geometric reason, that you don't need saviors. You need knowledge, understanding, reason. Proposition 67 of Ethics, Part 4. A free man thinks of nothing less than of death, and his wisdom is a meditation not on death, but on life. Don't keep meditating on crucifixions, on sacrifices, on necessary deaths. Meditate on life, on reconstruction, on the 54 years that come after the worst day. Jesus lived that. Baruch Spinoza lived that, and you can live that. So here's the practical application. The thing you can do today. Now, identify your cross, that which nailed you and that immobilized you, that made you believe it was over. It could be a relationship that ended, a job you lost, a betrayal you suffered, an illness you faced, a failure that defines you. Now ask, are you treating this as death or as a temporary crucifixion? Because if it's death, you'll keep waiting for a miraculous resurrection. But if it's a temporary crucifixion, you can do what Jesus, son of Joseph, did. And what exactly did he do? Let me give you the method, step by step, based on the texts that survived. Step 1. Accept that the old you died. Not literally, but symbolically. Jesus of Nazareth. The preacher who entered Jerusalem acclaimed, died on that cross. That identity is over. That mission failed, and he accepted it. He didn't try to go back to Jerusalem. He didn't try to reunite the apostles. He didn't try to resurrect the movement. He let it die. That's pure Baruch Spinoza. Proposition 21 of Part 4. No one can desire to be blessed, to act well, and to live well without at the same time desiring to be, to act, and to live, that is, to actually exist. In other words, to live fully again, you need to accept that the previous version of you no longer exists, not in denial, in rational acceptance. Step 2. Change your environment. Jesus didn't stay in Jerusalem. He went to Alexandria, 300 miles away, a new city, a new culture, a new dominant language. Greek. He had to start completely over, and that was strategic. Baruch Spinoza did the same. When he was excommunicated, he didn't try to reconcile with the synagogue. He moved, first to Rheinsberg, then to Voorburg, finally to The Hague, always on the move, always rebuilding on new soil. Why? Because old environments have memories. People who knew you in one way, fixed expectations, crystallized narratives about who you used to be. If you want to live differently, you need space where no one defines you by your past. Step 3, rebuild your identity around what you really value. Jesus, son of Joseph, in Alexandria, was no longer the Messiah everyone expected. He was a teacher of wisdom. He taught, but he didn't preach apocalypse. He didn't promise an earthly kingdom. He didn't recruit soldiers for a revolution. The key. Alexandrian texts show us a philosophical Jesus, someone who discussed Plato, who engaged in dialogue with the Stoics, who knew Philo of Alexandria, the Jewish philosopher who blended the Torah with Greek philosophy. This Jesus was interested in truth, not in power. And that changes everything, because the Jesus of Jerusalem failed politically. He was crucified. But the Jesus of Alexandria succeeded philosophically. He influenced generations. He left behind intellectual and biological descendants. He died peacefully at 87 years old. Which version is more powerful? The one who died as a martyr, or the one who lived as a sage? Step 4. Build a new community. Jesus, son of Joseph, didn't stay alone in Alexandria. He remarried, he had children, he taught. Disciples, he created a circle. The Acts of Philip mention that there was a house of teaching, a place where people gathered, not a temple, a house, where they conversed, questioned, and learned. This is also true of Baruch Spinoza. He created philosophical circles, friends who gathered to discuss ideas, not a church, not a formal school, a community of seekers, and these circles preserved and spread his ideas even after his death. You also need this. After the cross, you can't rebuild alone. You need people who see you for what you are becoming, not for what you were. People who challenge you intellectually, who support you emotionally, who walk alongside you. Step 5. Live long enough for the cross to become just one chapter, not the whole book. Jesus, son of Joseph, lived 54 years after the crucifixion. 54. That's more than double what he lived before. The cross was an event, not an identity. Baruch Spinoza lived 44 years. He was excommunicated at 23. He lived 21 years. After the excommunication, half his life was reconstruction, and it's for that second half that he's remembered. Not for the excommunication, but for the ethics, for the Tractatus, for the ideas that changed philosophy. You have time. More time than you imagine. If your cross was at 30, you might have 50 years of reconstruction. If it was at 50, you might have 30. And in those years, you will do things that will completely redefine who you are. Survive the first hours, the most painful ones. Accept help from those who love you. Joseph of Arimathea was there. James the Just was there. Mary Magdalene was there. You also have people. Let them take you down from the cross. Go to the tomb, a private place, protected, where you recover away from judging eyes. Jesus, son of Joseph, stayed for 3 days. You might need 3 months, 3 years. It doesn't matter. The tomb isn't the end. It's a hospital. Reorganize the cloths. Those symbols of death, those narratives of failure, fold them. Put them in their place. Don't deny that it happened, but organize it, process it, transform it into a memory, not an identity, and leave. Start again. Maybe in another city. Jesus went to Alexandria, maybe with another name. Use Asaph, maybe with a new mission, to teach differently, to live differently. And if you do that, you can live your next 54 years, not as a victim of the cross, but as someone who survived it. Baruch Spinoza ends the ethics with Proposition 42 of Part 5. Blessedness is not the reward of virtue, but virtue itself. Nor do we rejoice in it because we restrain our lusts, but on the contrary, because we rejoice in it, we are therefore able to restrain them. Translating, happiness doesn't come after you sacrifice yourself. It comes when you live fully, and living fully gives you the strength to overcome any pain. Jesus, son of Joseph, lived this. 87 years, with a wife, children, a community, teachings, not as a god, but as a fulfilled human being. And the greatest miracle isn't that he resurrected, it's that he had the courage to start over. You've just discovered truths that cost Baruch Spinoza exile and excommunication. These revelations were hidden for centuries because they challenge powerful narratives. Each of these videos requires diving into archives, translating manuscripts, connecting dots that they tried to erase. The super thanks down there isn't just support, it's you saying, I won't accept official versions without questioning them anymore. You become part of those who choose truth over comfort. Now tell me, what was the moment in your life when you thought it was the end, but it was actually just the beginning of something else? Comment down below. I want to know if you're on the team that accepts pre-packaged narratives or the team that questions until they find the truth.